It's been a while since I did a 2K5 rebuild. Last time I did one, it was with the 49ers. I've done one with the Lions, my first one was with the Dolphins, and I'm thinking about redoing that one. But before I do that, the next team I choose is going to be the San Diego Chargers. Obviously, the best player on the team was LaDainian Tomlinson in 2004. He was inducted into the Hall of Fame in 2017, and he also somehow has a job with the Los Angeles Chargers. I don't know what he does, but I'm sure he's getting paid. There weren't many good players on the team. After Lorenzo Neal and Donnie Edwards, the quality of players dips quickly. I'm debating blowing the team up right now or wait till the next season. Most of these good players are near 10 years of experience already. I might just tank. You know who would be a great tank commander? Doug Flutie in his 19th season. He's got nothing to lose, he's going to start. We also have Phillip Rivers, who's a rookie, but I'd rather not force him in on a bad team. We don't need another Tim Couch, David Carr situation here in San Diego. While I'm sure Drew Brees will get some playing time as well, but I've already decided next season Rivers will be the starter. We already have one weapon back there with LT, but behind him there isn't really a lot of options if he goes down. There's a quote that goes, "Fellas, if 18 goes down, we're fucked." And we don't practice fucked. Just replace 18 with 21. I do think Jesse Chapman and Michael Turner could be decent for depth in the future. We'll see how the season goes. Lorenzo Neal is the second best player on the team, fitting that he's lead blocking for the best player on the team. Kevin Dyson is our number one receiver on the team, followed by Tim Dwight. There's not a lot of talent after that, but to be honest, with Dyson being on the final year of his contract and going into his 7th season, I might just try to trade him and get something in return. Every second that goes by, I keep leaning towards doing a hard reboot on the team. Antonio Gates is the starter at tight end. He's not very good, but I can see him developing into a solid player later on down the road. He too also works with the Los Angeles Chargers. Looks like he's teammates with LT. Behind Gates, it doesn't really get much better. Peel is decent enough that the drop in quality won't be too much. At center, Jason Ball will be the starter. We do have a rookie in Nick Hardwick behind him. I know that Hardwick ends up being a very good center in real life, but with Ball's contract being that much, I can't see not starting him considering he's also much better than Hardwick at this point. He'll be sitting for his rookie year. We have two decent enough guards with Goff and Finoti. They're a little too rich for my blood, but considering they're the starters, I don't mind so much. My issue is the depth. We only have one guard behind these two. We'll have to look into finding some more help if injuries occur. The worst spot on the offensive line would have to be the tackles. Oben is currently one of the starters. He's not great, but he's also the best we got. Behind him is Van Buren and Jordan, who are very equal to one another, but I'm actually going to reach here. I'm going to start Shane Olivier. For those who don't know, he passed away last year at the age of 40. I think he has the potential to develop better than both Van Buren and Jordan. We're now on the defensive side. The team does run a 3-4 defense, which means we don't need 4 defensive tackles. Williams, Fisk, and Olshansky are all within a few overall points from one another. It just makes sense to go with Olshansky as the starter since he's a rookie. Fisk is going into his 10th season, while Williams could be a good player to trade. He won't have a cap penalty towards us. Defensive end is where we begin to struggle a bit on what to do. Clearly Dingle and Scott should be the starters, but I'm very tempted to start Sean Phillips. Plus Leverett isn't that far off from Scott. I'm struggling to decide who to start in terms of development for the future. For now, Dingle and Scott will be the starters. At outside linebacker, it's clear that Leber and Foley will be starting. There isn't much depth behind them. Cooper is all we have, and that's not good. I'll have to look into getting another player just in case. I like to prepare for injuries. Our biggest strength on the defense is probably inside linebacker. We have Edwards and Godfrey as the starters in the 3-4 defense, with Moreno as the backup. I might look into bringing another player for depth reasons, but we're solid here. Quentin Jammer leads our cornerback position. He's clearly someone I want to build this secondary around. He's barely going into his 3rd year. Sammy Davis is another player I want to see develop. He's just in his 2nd year, while Fletcher is basically the veteran in this group. He's going into his 4th year, which speaks at how young this team really is at the moment. We're still young at strong safety. Terrence Keel will be the starter going into the second season with Fox backing him up, while the veteran Lassiter going into his 10th season will be starting at free safety. He's clearly the best guy at the position, and Wilson isn't going to push for the starting job yet. Lassiter unfortunately passed away back in 2019, and it's sad to see a lot of players that I grew up watching pass away. I don't know if it's because of how rough the game was back then, even in 2004, or outside influences, but it still breaks my heart. The kicker Nate Kading, punter Mike Schreifs. We're currently sitting at $13 million under the cap. That's really good. Next year we're looking to be $19 million under. We're going to have some money to play around with next year, but let's try to keep our focus on the upcoming season. If the preseason is any indicator of what's going to come this season, it's not looking good. Phil Bogle will also be injured for 2 games. This is why I wanted to have depth at this position. I don't expect to have a great season, and the game thinks the same. We're ranked 29th, and I believe it. Before the season began, I wanted to do some roster moves. The first one being Leon Johnson. He's an older player with no cap penalty. You knew it was going to happen. I went looking for a trade partner. The 49ers were in need of a running back, and you saw one of our backup guards go down. Player for player trade. 49ers now have better depth at halfback, while we have better depth at guard with Ledford. He's not a starter, but he's the kind of player that if someone goes down for a game or two, he'll do the job. You knew it was going to happen. Jamal Williams is up next. This one makes sense since we have a young player behind him, and he doesn't hurt our cap. I wanted to go ahead and trade him to Washington for Antonio Pierce. We needed extra depth at outside linebacker. They didn't want to part with them. Makes sense since they would only have 2 players in that position if they let him go. So I went to Pittsburgh and tried to trade for Mallard. I also tried to squeeze a draft pick out of them, gaining a 5th round pick. I was surprised Williams didn't garner much interest. Mallard instantly becomes our 3rd best outside linebacker. That's not a good thing. That shows our lack of decent depth. He doesn't do anything particularly well besides run coverage, but I do like my linebackers fast. He got speed. Williams, on the other hand, will start immediately with Hampton being injured, which is why I was upset I wasn't able to get more out of him. Either way, they got a solid player until Hampton can return. They clearly won the trade, but we don't have to worry about that salary. Now we can begin the season, and that'll be against the Houston Texans. I did gamecast every game in the year. I'm not going to show them all, just the ones I thought were interesting. I also will not commentate over them. Enjoy. Doug Flutie came out firing at the start of the season, but couldn't put together a game-winning drive, turning it over in the red zone during the final 3 minutes. They did better than I thought they would, but they couldn't finish the job. There was an injury to Fonoti. It's a good thing we traded for Ledford earlier, but 10 weeks may be asking too much out of him. It's a good thing Rivers isn't starting now because the offensive line just got worse. Week 2, they have their season opener against the Jets. Don't be fooled by the score. It was 17-3 by the final 2 minutes of the game. Flutie has been solid and LT helped carry them to victory this week. Dyson exploded for over 140 yards. Week 3 would be their first divisional matchup of the year against the Denver Broncos. It wasn't even close. They stuffed the running game, and this was where we were exposed in our secondary. They would get a chance to get back to 500 against the Titans in week 4. This week, the defense did its job, but the offense struggled, especially Flutie. He had a pedestrian game, not even able to get over 100 yards, which led me to benching him. Time to see if we have anything in Brees. His first start would be against the Jacksonville Jaguars in week 5. He actually did pretty well, throwing close to 200 yards, 1 touchdown, but LT wasn't able to carry some of the weight, barely getting close to 50 yards on the ground, while the defense was once again their strength. The news gets worse as LT will be out for a few weeks, which would explain his low production in this game. We're 1-4 on the year. I don't think we're going to make the playoffs. I don't even think we'll break 5 wins. The offense is struggling. We're in full rebuild mode now. Kevin Dyson had 1 good game. He's helped us get our only win, but he deserves to be on a contender. Plus, he's going to be expensive next year. So I went to Philadelphia with an offer, Dyson and a 5th round pick for Greg Lewis and a 3rd round pick. Why Lewis? They wouldn't accept our offer because they had too many players on the team, but we don't need to go to free agency to fill the void. While the Eagles get a solid number 2 out of Dyson to help take some of the pressure off of T.O. Another player I was looking to move on from, Adrian Dingle. I don't think he'll be worth keeping around if Leverett or Phillips develop going into next season. I went to Green Bay to trade him for Al Harris. I also added Jamar Fletcher, and in return they added Spearman and a 3rd round pick. We beefed up our corners this season and we're building towards the upcoming draft, while Spearman was insurance if an injury were to occur. I also wanted to trade Lassiter. I went to New Orleans. I just wanted a 3rd round pick, but I also asked for Lamar Smith. It had little impact on the trade interest. We now have a decent backup behind LT, especially with him being banged up right now, while the Saints now have a solid starter in Lassiter. We're not entirely done yet. I went to free agency and found Gabriel Wilson. He's a rookie and could be a steal if he develops next year. What a better way to see how well our blown up team will perform than against the undefeated Falcons.
Work well done. Is inside his own 20. Gets the handoff, goes off right tackle. The defense must have been fast asleep. The midfield, the 40, the 30, the 20, the 10, the 5, 82 yards.
The offense is still terrible, and the run defense without Dingle is completely non-existent. I think the tanking is working. We now take on a team that might be as equally bad as us, the Panthers. This was the Tank Bowl, and the Chargers somehow won this game. It's nice to see we're not the worst team in the NFL. We do have some more injuries. Labor is out for a few weeks, which means Mallard will get some playing time while Lamar Smith will be out for a game. We're now going to be at the halfway point of the season against the Raiders this week. I don't think Drew Brees is the guy. He has a tendency to do a dink and dunk offense, 7 incompletions, but can't get more than 1 touchdown. I think he'd be a solid backup but not a starter. Sammy Davis was a guy I had high hopes for, and an injury will end his season. Fractured his arm against Oakland. I saw an injured Bernard Berrien in free agency and gave him a contract. I think he'll instantly make our team better. I also had to let go of David Binn in order to sign James Whitley to replace Sammy Davis. I do think Florence will be a big player for this team in the future, but he's been our primary return guy and I don't need him getting injured too. At mid-season, we're ranked 29th, which is technically better than what we were ranked at the start of the year, though not by much. Week 9, and we get a revenge game from Lassiter with the Saints. You're probably wondering why Flutie is in this game. Brees went 4 for 11 and 38 yards in the first half. I benched him. Flutie is just flat out better than him. Now we have our rematch against the Oakland Raiders. This offense is just not good. This defense is also not good. The team is not good. We are now going to have our second player on IR in Antonio Gates, and to add depth at the tight end position, I signed Chris Wilson. Our tight ends weren't great to begin with, they're even worse now, but with our guards healthy again, I will be starting Rivers the rest of the season. I know I said I wasn't going to start him this year, but with how bad this team is overall, I might as well try and see if I have some potential going into next season. Worst case scenario, we can draft a quarterback. He will start and finish against the Chiefs, so let's see if he can improve between the meetings. Probably not the smartest idea to start him against a juggernaut team like the Chiefs, but it's not like he did worse than Brees. Now they take on the Denver Broncos, and this one was a good one. My biggest problem with this loss is that instead of taking 3 points when they had a lead, they continue to throw. Keeping the ball in the hands of your rookie with 1 game of experience, you have LT back there, keep it in his hands. We're down to the final 4-game stretch this week against the Bucks. I know we're not a good team, but I'm honestly unsure how to fix this. I thought the offense needed help, but this defense is terrible. On to the Browns. With all things said, Phillip Rivers has not been terrible. I mean, he did have that 4-interception game, but other than that, he's been pretty solid. We do have our 3rd guy out for the year. DeQuincy Scott will be put on IR. With 2 games left to go, can we win one of them? The defense continues to be a wet paper towel, but the offense has been a bit more productive with Rivers in there. I'm looking at any positive I can see. This is going to be the true test. Will they do better second time around against the Chiefs? They actually got worse. Finished the year on not just a blowout, but a shutout. Well, this was a fun season. 2-14. Both Flutie and Brees ended up winning a game for the team. Flutie barely outdid Brees with his quarterback rating, though I think Phillip Rivers deserves some credit. Had it not been for a 4-interception game, his numbers would look much better. Here's hoping next season goes better. To say I'm disappointed by the running game would be an understatement. LT only had 1 rushing touchdown this season. That is criminal. I don't know if it's because of the offensive line, but I expect him to have closer to 1,500 yards too. I know he was injured, but he disappointed me this season. When I traded for Lamar Smith, I wasn't expecting huge numbers. I think he did his job, plus he was free in the trade. I think the passing game was okay, not great, but look at what we have to work with. I thought Bernard Berrien was going to be productive. I do think Tim Dwight did a phenomenal job picking up the workload when I traded Dyson, while Eric Parker did a decent job being an okay number 2. This is probably the biggest position of need next to tackle we need to address this offseason. The entire defense needs to be addressed because these numbers were terrible. Hardly any sacks and interceptions. It was just bad all around. I now see why we were last in most defensive rankings. Donnie Edwards was our best pass rusher. He had 8 tackles. I don't even know how to respond to that. Igor Olshansky gives me hope that he can carry the weight of leadership for years to come. He was one of the best defenders. I had hoped for Gabriel Wilson. He's fast and can cover well, but his ability to stop the run is non-existent. You know what else is non-existent? Nate Kading making a kick past 40 yards. While Cyphers is a decent punter near midfield, almost half his punts were in the 20s. I would like a stronger leg. Remember when I said Drayden Florence was our returner and I hope he didn't get hurt? This is why. He had 3 touchdowns returning this season. We now got the yearly awards and Brett Favre is the MVP. Those are really good numbers for just 5 minutes of simulating. Donovan McNabb earned the Offensive Player of the Year award. If he was the runner-up, then Favre ran away with the MVP. Defensive Player of the Year was my boy Zach Thomas. I think I shed a tear when I found out. Offensive Rookie of the Year was Ben Roethlisberger. I think he wins it every time I do one of these. Defensive Rookie of the Year was DJ Williams. Playing against us twice a year will help you look good. Now that we're at the end of the season, I briefly wanted to talk about our team rankings. We were 3rd worst on total offense, 5th worst in passing yards, 6th worst in rushing yards. We need to run more. We had the worst defense in the league by 4 yards. Believe it or not, we had the 16th ranked pass defense. We also had the worst run defense. So you know what I need to fix this offseason. Now the mock draft has us picking first and selecting quarterback Peter Sparks. Heck of a name. Can he provide a spark for this team, or do we choose someone else? Wild card round, and there are 2 teams I'm looking at, Green Bay and Philadelphia, which they both made it to the next round along with my boys in Miami. Now in the divisional round, there's one team I really want to see lose, the Kansas City Chiefs. Indianapolis, don't let me down. The Colts beat the Falcons, Peyton Manning earns MVP, and the offseason begins in the next video. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, consider watching the next one, because I'm not sure I can fix this team that quickly. Watch me struggle.